This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, part of the CLNS Media Network. And, of course, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, Greg, the stories are piling up earlier today. We're recording this on Wednesday. A lot of reports began with Andrew Callahan that Anfernee, Jennings, and Kyle Duggar are on the trade block. I don't think that's super surprising to anybody who's been following this team over the past few weeks. But I want to ask you, what do you think happens with these guys?
I think that they find a trade partner for Jennings. I mean, none of these guys are going to amount to much as far as a return. Jennings could get like a fifth. Duggar, I think that it all depends on if the Patriots are willing to eat some of the money on his contract. Probably I think he has like $9.5 million guaranteed this year. They might be able to get something decent in return for him. But it could end up a scenario where they just end up releasing him. I mean, it's in the Patriots' best interest probably to trade him. It helps a little bit on the cap, but I don't think that's really a concern because they have so much cap space remaining for this year. I think it's more about getting Duggar off the books for the next couple of years when they're, for right now, a little bit tighter against the cap. I think Bourne is, also in play. Could they get something for Ja'Lynn Polk if they decide to move on, which I think it's heading in that direction. I think it's going to be tough because he's been hurt. So I think the Patriots, Tavai could be, also a person of interest around the league. Again, we're dealing with another guy who's hurt. Bourne's been hurt. It's a little bit tough to trade those guys. It might be contingent on a physical at some point, passing the physical. So, but I think the Patriots are open for business, and they have been. I mean, I don't think it's breaking news. I mean, Jennings and Duggar and a lot of guys have been available. This is when it starts to get talked about going into the last preseason game, in the wake of the last preseason game, all that stuff. And so it's definitely ramping up at this point.
Yeah, and Callahan had the numbers financially. So if Duggar's released, the Patriots would absorb $14.25 million on the dead cap hit. It would create $1 million in cap space, so negligible. And when you look at, Duggar's new team, if they were able to trade Duggar, they would have to inherit $9.75 million fully guaranteed. Greg mentioned somewhere around $9 million, so it's $9.75. And then he's got an additional $1 million in per-game roster bonuses. So that's how the money would work with Kyle Duggar. All right, let's talk about some things, Greg. I know that you were on Felger and Maz yesterday, and you might not have been able, or able's the wrong word, afforded the opportunity to talk about a few things about this football team that you actually think are good. So let's cover some of the good things, and then we'll get to some of the other stuff. But let's go through it. You gave me a list of things that you feel good about. Let's start with the coaching, especially Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, I just, when I went through an exercise, and of course, Felger, surprisingly, concentrated on the things that I don't feel great about on the Patriots and that I worry about or I have questions, which caused me to, for now, downgrade my, prediction for them, which, listeners of this podcast know the last time, we went through this exercise, it was once the schedule came out and my prediction came out 11-6. I'm more now in the 8-9 range as we get more data that goes on about this team. But, I think the thing that I feel best about with the Patriots is the entire coaching situation, starting with Mike Vrabel. I think we're already seeing fruits of what they've done. I think that you'd be, hard pressed to find anybody really outside of like Duggar, which might be an injury situation where players have not gotten better. I mean, I think that universally, I think that the players for the most part, have improved. There are definitely some players that are sort of mired where they were at the end of last year, like a, Layden Robinson or like a City So, people like that, DeMontre Jacobs. But I think, when you look at sort of the starters and the second teamers for this group, I think that you look across the board and I think they've improved. And that starts with Vrabel, how he's coaching these guys, how he's coaching the coaches to coach these players. And I think the world of Mike Vrabel in terms of, we haven't even gotten into it because it's just the preseason, but, game management, having a vision for a game plan and communicating that to the coordinators that this is how we're going to win this game this week. And so, if somebody asks me, like, what do I feel best about with the Patriots going into the 2025 season, it's Mike Vrabel and their coaching staff and their ability to get the best out of this roster. I think that Mike is one of these coaches who demonstrated that he did more with less in Tennessee. I know, some people like, Andrew Callahan, like trot out, like, he has the most wins or whatever as like an underdog and when he was coached with the Titans. And I think all of that stuff is legitimate. I just think that Mike is really good at maximizing what he can work with. It's just going to depend on how much do they have to work with.
Another coach on the staff that you list as one of the things you feel good about is Josh McDaniels, and specifically his ability to scheme and game plan. Greg, what have you seen? I want to kind of nail down the scheme stuff. What have you seen from McDaniels? How much would you say it's the same old, same old? How much would you say is new? I know, Taylor Kyles and Evan Lazar, for example, have talked about McDaniels. It seems to be they're shifting to a little bit more outside zone run. What have you seen from the scheme and just your confidence behind McDaniels and his ability to game plan week to week?
Yeah, I have been surprised about how much outside zone they've incorporated in the practices that we've seen. And I don't want to, and plus I'm not that much of an expert to be able to give you sort of like inside information on what the Patriots are doing, that would be to their detriment, competitive detriment,
right,
when you're talking about opponents. But, I have been surprised at how much outside zone they're running. I do think to me, I think it's a product, and they're sort of laying the foundation for using Drake Maye's legs in this offense or getting him on the move. And like the reason that you really like outside zone is that all the stuff that you can do, play action, boots, things like that are easy for the quarterback, that are easy for the offense, get easy yards, especially on, first downs. And so, that's been a little bit of a surprise. I would say for the most part, Nick, so far, outside of, there have been, running elements of this offense that we haven't seen, even though, we probably saw some of it with Cam Newton when he was here under McDaniels. I would say at this point, Nick, most of the offense is sort of bread and butter Patriot stuff, the stuff that they're going to rely on. And that's not a negative to me, because really, when you think about it, like, they're installing a new offense. And I think Josh is tremendous. And we saw this Mac Jones's rookie year, that he is great about like laying a foundation and then sort of like, and then, giving width to what they can do, more volume to what they can do as they go along in the season. Like, you can't all of a sudden get to a, high powered attack without mastering the base plays in this offense. And those base plays, whether it's running plays or little pop plays to the tight ends, which we've seen a lot in the joint practices, which have been a staple of this scheme. Those are really good foundational pieces of this offense. And I think, once the Patriots show that they can master that, and, for example, I mean, Drake missed, for instance, the Mac Hollins pass on the his first throw of the game, which was high, that Mac made a nice play on. The Demario Douglas was a little bit of a pop pass that was high and almost intercepted. Like, the more that stuff becomes old habit for Drake Maye and the people in this offense, then I think you're going to see them expound more. But I think, where Josh shines is in the game-to-game game plan adjustments, being able to take advantage of the weaknesses of a defense. And I take a lot of comfort in that, and, that he's going to bring Drake Maye along.
Something else. Let's go to the next topic on your list of good things about this team that you've seen. And you've got overall the talent on this team. You like it?
Yeah, I do. And, I do. When you look at the starters and, when people are healthy, you look at the front line, you're like, all right, well, these guys can compete. I mean, I think they brought the roster up to a little bit less than league average. I think they were, bottom 5 before the work they did this offseason, the draft, which I think, you're going to get a lot of contributors immediately from this draft class.
Yeah.
And, I don't agree with, I wouldn't go so far as, I forget, I'm looking it up who wrote it. I think it was, what is his name? Mike Clay. He used to be a PFF guy, I think, and he went through, analyzed all the rosters, and he has the Patriots 16th overall in the league. I don't know if I would go that far. I mean, the Patriots are like right behind the Green Bay Packers. I don't know about that. The Packers have some good players, some good young players. But, I do think that the Patriots are now, anywhere from 16 to like 20 in the league. And I think that what they set out to do was basically, a carbon copy of what the Commanders did the year before. I don't think anybody entering last season would have looked at the Commanders roster and said, like, they're going to light the world on fire. They're going to jump 8 games and go to the NFC Championship game, just based on their talent. I don't think anybody would have said that last year. But that's the whole idea of going out and get, a Robert Spillane, a Jack Gibbons, a Harold Landry, a Carlton Davis, who, is, high money. But I think you look across the board, like, I feel good about where the Patriots are. I think that their talent level is now at a point where just about every week they can compete. And it's going to come down to, execution and coaching decisions and turnover margins and things like that. I feel good. I think people, for example, Michael Hawley thinks this roster is trash. And I've been on with him and I've been like, Mike, I think you're underestimating how good this team is, or how the talent is. Now, that being said, the depth on this team scares me to freaking death. But where they are right now in terms of, what they could really do in one offseason, I think they've done a nice job, and they've set themselves up with a chance to compete.
And it ties into what we started with, Jennings and Duggar being available. You go back, if it's 2024 in that roster, even if Duggar's playing as bad as he's been playing, I don't think we're talking about a possible trade. I think he's still on the roster because they just didn't have as many options that you feel decent about. Now you draft Craig Woodson, and you feel like, okay, now you've got enough guys at safety to cover your butt where you can say, we're not worried about Duggar. If we're going to cut him, if we're going to trade him. And Jennings, obviously a valuable member of this team the last couple of years, and he's expendable. And I think that goes into, yes, partially fit, but also what they've done with this roster to at least give them a chance to make some tough decisions on the 53. The last thing that you want to talk about that's good, my guy, hopped up on Mountain Dew, Jeremy Springer, in his special teams unit.
Yeah, I think I've been impressed with their special teams. I've never been much of a special teams film watcher, but I have this preseason. Part of the way that the coach's film comes across to me, it's now interwoven in there, so I do watch it. But there's so many fringe guys on this roster that we're not sure, are they going to keep them, are they not? Like, it's important to watch special teams, and I think that they're doing a nice job. I think the punter's good. I think they'll figure out the kicker thing. I'm still going with Borregales right now over Parker Romo. We'll see how that ends up. I mean, would it be a surprise if they kept Romo and let go of Borregales? No, but I think that we've already seen the impact I think Travion Henderson, when you factor in kickoff returns as part of his touches in the game, I think that's going to be a factor.
Yep.
I think that he's going to give them a boost there. Marcus Jones is really good in punt returns, which we know. He showed it again the other night. Hopefully he stays healthy. And I think that their coverage units are really good. I mean, Brendan Schooler, for all that he's annoying and he gets hopped up and sometimes he has stupid penalties. Like he pile drive in the first game, he pile drives some guy into the turf. Luckily there was an offsetting penalty, but it was just like, dude, what are you doing? It's 10 yards behind the play, but that's just what he does. He does those things. But I will say this, that dude could freaking cover kicks, man. He flies down the field. He is a pain in the ass. And so I think all the way around, I think their special teams, which were really good, they were amongst the best in the league. They showed dramatic improvement last year under Springer. I think that's going to continue. And if Travion Henderson can continue to make an impact, we could be talking about one of the best special teams units in the league. And with the change to the kickoff return, the rules, I think that's going to be a bonus for the Patriots. And I think it's going to help them even more compete in these games.
The fact that we're even having a conversation that they could be one of the best special teams units in football this year, what a gigantic leap from 2023. They were a disaster towards the tail end of Belichick's tenure. One of the only good things about last year's team was the special teams, and now Springer's got his guys playing even better. So it looks like that's going to be a phase that actually helps this team again, which would be nice to see. All right, we've talked about the good. We've got to get to some of the stuff that Greg is worried about, but first, he wants to tell you about PrizePicks.
Yes, PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. I love sitting down for the game. I'll be doing that with the baseball team. Big series this weekend after a couple rough ones the last couple nights, but I'll be there making my picks because the app is awesome. It's fun. Get you in the middle of the game. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match your player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, esports, golf, auto racing, you name it, they have it. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out. If your lineup isn't perfect, you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, secure, and safe. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts, like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
And for those listening, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show, a lot of other great Patriots content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. And check out the big boy and Mike Giardi at BSJ, $50 for the year. It's going to be an interesting season. And these guys with their sources and the film they watch, great stuff. You want to check them out, $50 for the year at Boston Sports Journal. All right, let's get to some of the stuff, Greg, that you're worried about. You touched on this for a second, but let's dive deeper into it. You like the talent on this team overall, but you do have concerns about the depth of this roster.
Yeah, that's the thing that scares me the most. And we all know there are going to be injuries. There always are. I mean, the Patriots could get very lucky. You need a lot of injury luck to, compete in this league and go to the playoffs. And, maybe that happens with the Patriots. I don't know, but there are certain positions that, scare me to death. For example, if the Patriots lose Robert Spillane at middle linebacker, I don't know what they're going to do. And maybe that ends up getting a guy like Tavai on the roster that that he can do different things and he's versatile. But I've been underwhelmed with the linebacker group. I think that, if they lose either Barmore or Milton Williams in the middle of this defense, and I'm not really sure, exactly how good they are, especially for the money that they're getting paid. If they lose one of those guys, they don't really have anything, behind them. I think Tonga has proven to be a really good player at defensive tackle. They just added Pecco, who's a veteran who's been around, who can sort of back up Tonga. But if they lose Tonga, how are they going to defend the run? They lose a guy like Harold Landry on the edge. Like, while I do like guys like Truman Jones and Elijah Ponder, and I do think they have potential and they're on my roster, like, are they ready for prime time to be out there every week? And then, of course, you get into the line. I mean, good Lord. If Will Campbell goes down, the season's pretty much over for the offense. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. What are they going to put Vidarian Lowe out there, or, what have you? Marcus Bryant, who has been impressive, one of these guys who has improved under this coaching staff. What happens as center? Garrett Bradbury goes down. That could be a blessing in disguise if they move Wilson. But then, they're if Mike Owenu goes down, what are they going to do? So, and of course, quarterback. If Drake Maye misses time, which he tends to do, how good do you feel about Josh Dobbs? And what are they going to do at third string quarterback? Even though I like some of what Woldridge has done this preseason. So, yeah, I am. And look, I know you're going to hear it. I think we've already heard it on the airwaves, about like, oh, they should have done more. They could have done more. Like, they had a lot of crap to do. I mean, when you lose, distinct possibility is you're going to have just Drake Maye left from the draft class from last year. I mean, you're screwed. There's only so much you can do in one offseason. So they've tried, but man, if they don't have good injury luck this year, they're in tough shakes. Now, I do like, if they get an injury at cornerback, I feel okay about that. I think at wide receiver, I feel all right about it, even though, they don't have a top line guy. But if Steph Diggs doesn't go down, are they still going to get production from Demario Douglas and, Kyle Williams and Mac Hollins and, Kayshon Boutte? Yeah, I do. I think they are. But this team is very, very thin. It's not a surprise. There's nothing they could do about it. It's just you're going to have to hold your breath this year and hope that they have good injury luck this year, or, that could severely affect things.
Just a massive amount of turnover, and a couple of factors. Obviously, coaching staff turnover, which means you're changing schemes. Some guys aren't going to be fits. Vrabel wanted to turn over a lot of the culture and get different personalities in the locker room. So that led to guys like, Wise and Jonathan Jones being let go. And hey, good luck in your future endeavors. And then last year's free agency didn't hit as well as they were hoping. And then the draft that you mentioned, Greg, is abysmal right now that you're looking back at 2024. The drafts before 2024, which weren't very good. I mean, there was so much turnover this offseason that I don't think it was possible to have that much turnover, look at a roster and say, oh man, this roster is really good and it's also deep. I think that would be an unreasonable expectation to have given what led into that. I mean, you go back to 2024 in that offseason. We talked about it a lot on this podcast. You're looking at the idea of what Belichick left. Belichick did not leave them with a starting tackle. He did not leave them with more than one running back on the roster. He didn't leave them with a tight end. He didn't leave them with, this is pretty important last time I checked, a quarterback other than Mac Jones. You look at the roster that Bill left. I mean, so many holes in the boat. And you didn't plug enough of them last offseason. So that led into this offseason plus the new coaching staff. Just a lot of new faces and trying to do some things here. All right, let's get to the next part of this team that you're worried about. And this is going to make a lot of people queasy. Drake Maye.
Yeah, it's more about like, I just think there's a lot that we don't know about Drake. Now, I will say this, and this is important, and let me lead with this thought. Internally, they love Drake Maye. They think he has it all, and he may be young. He may be a bit of a bucking bronco at this point, but he's got the goods. He's got the intangibles. He's developing the leadership component of it. He processes well. He's picking up the offense, the protections and things like this and things like that. And we even saw this in the game the other day. I thought he made a couple of really good checks at the line in the running plays that helped. So that's that's all good. And I also want to say that, what I have seen in the joint practices, especially, in Minnesota, where I think that, some people were questioning, because I was like, I thought the Patriots offense won over the Minnesota defense the second day. Yeah, there were some rough reps, and it was not a good 2-minute period until they, had this Hail Mary basically to Kayshon Boutte for a touchdown. But after talking to people this week, I stand by what I said. I thought the offense did, pretty well. I thought they won their matchup. And so I think that and a lot of that had to do with Drake Maye. And I was extremely impressed with Drake. And Vrabel talked about this before the second practice. I talked about it after the first practice, with how much the Vikings do and how much is going on their defense. Like, Drake was unflappable. They might have had a rough rep, but you couldn't tell. And he just kept going on. And I've seen other quarterbacks, and, this is one example. And Nick, you might remember this. I mean, remember when the Patriots had a joint practice in Vegas? It was Josh McDaniels' first year. So that was the Matt Patricia offense. It was their first time sort of out. And Mac Jones was just, they couldn't block anything. And Mac Jones was just losing his crap all over the place. And it was an epic disaster set of practices out there. And like, there was the potential for that in this, but Drake just stays, flatline. And that's really good. But I mean, there's a lot of questions that I do have about Drake, and everybody, like, I understand if fans are excited, about Drake and what he's going to do and his potential, because it's all there. He has it all. But there's a lot that we don't know about him, and we didn't learn a whole lot, him winning one game last year. I don't love his mechanics. I think they're still sloppy. It led to some of the miscues the other night. I don't understand why Drake looks good in the joint practices and he borderline stinks in the 2 preseason games. So I'm very much a makeup quarterback guy in terms of, being a maniac, being fanatical about being a perfectionist about what you do. And I'm not saying Drake doesn't have that. I just don't know if he has that. Like, I didn't like his post-game reaction to the fumble against the Commanders. He just kind of shrugs his shoulders, and because that was a dumb play by him. It was dumb. And then he comes out after the Vikings game, and I thought he played largely like complete crap. And he's just like, oh, we just missed a couple plays. Like, so maybe he's just saying that outwardly and publicly, but internally he goes back and he's mad, and, he's working with the coaches. Like, I need to get, maybe that's going on. I don't know. But there's too much unknown basically about Drake Maye for me to be like, he's going to take a big leap this year from, a 1 win or a couple wins to 11 wins. Like, and I think it's much more likely that there's a slow build for him this year and a new offense with a lot of new pieces and an offensive line where they're trying to figure things out, than him to come in and light the world on fire. So, there are things I've been impressed with Drake this summer. There are still a lot of lingering questions that I have. And until I have those answers, until I see it for myself, I'm just dialing back a little bit. I'm pulling off the gas a little bit, tapping the brakes a little bit to wait and see it on the field.
I think it comes down to him displaying his emotion at times. That's how I feel like the way you're kind of breaking it down. Like, if he came out, if he came out in the post games and said, oh yeah, I played like shit. That play was inexcusable. My God, what the hell was I thinking? I got to get better. You would feel better about it. Right. But
yeah.
But I look at it and say, people just handle things differently. And I don't know. I don't know how Maye internalizes all of this stuff. He might be absolutely infuriated with himself inside, but he might be the type of guy that says, I'm not going to let anybody see that. I'm not going to let anybody feel that. I'm not going to let the media know, because if I go out there and I say something, I'm in the Boston market now. They're going to kill me. I don't want to deal with that stuff. Yeah, I'm pissed, but everybody knows it wasn't a good play. I'm not going to sit there and rip myself from pillar to post and look angry at the press conference to make, other people feel good about it. So what I take from what you said, where you began, was internally they love the guy. Now, Josh McDaniels worked with a guy by the name of Brady who was pretty damn fiery and a maniac. And Mike Vrabel is described by many as a maniac himself, and he looks for that from his players. So, look, I don't know Drake personally, but if internally, if McDaniels and Vrabel are saying he's got what you need to have to be that franchise quarterback, then that would tell me they feel like he is kind of a psycho. And even if he doesn't show it to us publicly, there's enough there interpersonally when they're dealing with each other and they see certain things behind closed doors that tell them that he does have that gene. So if they feel like that internally about him, then I feel like he's got it. Now, maybe they're wrong and maybe he doesn't have it and that plays out. But I'm not going to sit here and write off the idea that he has it just based off how he handles post-game press conferences. And the other part of it that you mentioned, and I think this is the bigger part, is how he starts games and how that could impact the team. And again, that might be a thing, though, where he understands, he appreciates it, he comprehends that he gets off to, shaky starts. He has admitted, I get a little amped up at the beginning of games. And maybe that's something he wants to work on without, again, kind of breaking it down, all the minutia in front of the media. We'll see. I mean, we'll see, because everything that I heard about Maye from people that know him is that he's got incredible work ethic, that he's crazy competitive. And to me, that's kind of, the first couple of steps to getting to where you're talking about, where he's kind of maniacal about it all.
I will say, good point by you bringing up the early game things, because, we've seen this. I think that was an issue in North Carolina. His pro day, I mean, he stunk out of the gate. I mean, he was spraying the ball all over the place. This is one of the reasons why you're glad that you have Josh McDaniels, because Josh McDaniels is, one of his best attributes is, and it's not just about the quarterback, it's the whole offense. He is great at knowing exactly what these guys can do and when, and asking them to do it. So if he thinks that Drake, if he doesn't want to throw a seam pass on the first series with Drake because he's afraid he's going to spray the ball and it's going to be picked off, he ain't going to do that. And he's going to figure out a way. He's going to have starters, drive starter plays that he has a great comfort with. And the other thing I wanted to bring up and ask you, Nick, is you may be right about about Drake. And like I said, it's not that I don't believe he doesn't have these traits. It's just that I can't see it. But how do you think, Vrabel's had some pointed comments about Drake, and not just about the dumb play against the Commanders. He was asked about Drake this week, and, there's a certain subtext to what he's saying, basically like, it hasn't been good enough and he needs to get his butt in gear. But how do you take, some of the commentary that Vrabel's had about Drake in terms of what we're talking about? Do you think he's trying to draw something out of him and not just the leadership thing?
I think certainly Vrabel, and this is the first time Vrabel's worked with a young quarterback with these kinds of expectations. I know he had Marcus Mariota in Tennessee, but that was pretty much, we knew at that point that Mariota was not going to be what people thought he was going to be. And he had his best run with Tannehill, and then he had a bunch of other dudes. Like Malik Willis was, I think, a second-round pick. So it could be just, Vrabel trying to get a little bit more out of the young guy, understanding that he's got to develop him, and understanding that, maybe Vrabel believes getting there quicker, this is the way to do it, which is to kind of put the feet to the fire. It's Belichickian. And Vrabel watching Belichick handle Brady for all of those years. I think part of it is also, hey, look, if I get on Maye, the golden boy, then everybody else on the team understands that I'm going to get on them too. And they've got to be ready for that. And I'm not gonna let Drake Maye take his sweet ass time in developing when we're trying to develop everybody else. So I think Vrabel's trying to be consistent with the entire roster, and he's using Maye as somebody to prop up and say, yeah, I'm going to hammer him. I'm going to go after him because I think he's one of our most talented guys. He is our most important guy, and I've got to hold him to that standard so I keep everybody else to that standard. I think that's a major part of why Vrabel says what he says about Maye. I just feel like it's out of the school of Belichick. And, how Maye responds. I would also say that, Maye, I don't want to, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Greg, but I want to make sure we make this point before we move on. Drake Maye has taken accountability a lot in his early time. And he has certainly come out last year in post games, and he has certainly talked to the media, and he has admitted when he screwed up. And let's not forget Elliott Wolf and what he said when they were going through the draft process with Maye. They showed him film and all the mistakes he made and all the mistakes that the team made. And Maye took every mistake on his shoulders. And even though it was clear when you watched the film that it was on the other guys. Now, that could have been some, prep from his agents and from his family. But he was a guy last year that came out and took accountability multiple times for screw-ups and said, I got to be better and stuff like that. So it's not as if, he hasn't come out and said, man, that was awful. I got to be better. And I'm going to work on it. A couple of other things that you're worried about. I want to hit quick. But first, don't forget CLNS, the media network, and Celtics All Access on CLNS for behind-the-scenes content, segments from many Celtics podcasts, NBA History Channel as well, the Patriots Press Pass we discussed earlier, and Bruins Rinkside. Center, let me ask you this, Greg. Am I reading things wrong that there really hasn't been a competition at center for the last week or two? And if there's not a legitimate competition at center happening right now, why not? Because from what I've been reading and hearing and from his 2024, Garrett Bradbury should not be feeling good about starting week one.
I would say it's been Bradbury and the center position has been up and down this summer. I think that early on in camp, not early on, but probably midway through camp before the preseason game started, that was thrown into a bit of a competition. Of course, you had Jared Wilson all of a sudden was the starting left guard, and everybody felt good there. I think that Bradbury, I thought he played really well in the first preseason game, and I think he really solidified his position heading into the Vikings joint practices and the Vikings preseason game. I did not think he did a good job that week. And so I think he's lost they've lost a little bit of confidence in him. They've started to throw it into competition a little bit. Right now, the way they're basically doing it is Ben Brown's competing at left guard and center at this point. We're going to have to see how they handle things in this preseason game. I mean, I don't know if Campbell needs to play, but everybody else that's in the mix, and I don't think Cole Strange is in the mix. I think that, Brown, Wilson, and Bradbury all need to play and compete in this game. I think they're going to be competing right up until the season opener. If I were them, because I saw enough of Ben Brown last year, and, he was, I meant to look this up, but my guy Aaron Schatz in his FTN Almanac has these, I just came across it. He has these stats from last year, and Ben Brown was I don't know, top 10 in the league in terms of center pass protection. And we've talked about it. I thought he did a really good job. I mean, he's not the greatest mover in the run game, but I would certainly seriously consider Ben Brown at center instead of Bradbury, depending on can Jared Wilson hold it down at left guard. I mean, I think there's a lot of things in play. There's a lot of things could Jared Wilson end up being the best center on this team this year? It's possible, but are they going to really put that on a rookie with a, second-year quarterback? That how they work in terms of protections and things like that. Do they really want to introduce that much change, with the quarterback and what they're doing up front? So I think there's a lot of discussions going on as far as what they're going to do at center. But yeah, that position scares me to death. I mean, Bradbury's been so up and down. Some days he looks great. Other days he's horrible. I thought he was terrible in the preseason game against the Vikings, against backups. Are we kidding? And so, yeah, that position scares the hell out of me.
I was surprised when I saw you mention that among the things that you're worried about is the defense. Why?
Yeah. and this could just be reactionary and recency bias, but Nick, holy hell, they were horrible against the Vikings in the second practice. And I know internally they were not happy. And I don't know what the deal was. Kevin O'Connell does things a little bit differently. And I want to say the first day, Kevin O'Connell loves to do sort of these get back on track periods where it's like 2nd and long and 3rd and long, which is to the defense advantage. And that's why, and there were some of those periods the second day when the Patriots pass protection was not great. I think it was better than a lot of people thought. But that second practice, I mean, they made JJ McCarthy look like, a Heisman Trophy winner and also sitting there watching them. And this could have been because of injuries and they didn't have people available. Like Jabril Peppers was not available in the second practice. But, when they're in game situation period and, you have Christian Ellis at linebacker trying to cover TJ Hawkinson man-to-man. You have Marcus Jones matching up with Jordan Addison in the slot because to this point, the Patriots haven't shown one inkling that they're going to match up man-to-man with their outside corners and travel them. I mean, they might do it. You would think they would practice it at some point. They haven't. I mean, when Carlton Davis is out there, now Gonzalez hasn't been out there, but you'd figured they'd start to do some of the things that they're going to do in the regular season. Maybe they're waiting. They have like 2.5 weeks until the season opener. Maybe they're waiting for us not to be at practice. But every practice that Carlton Davis has been out there, he's left outside cornerback, and that's it. He doesn't move. There's no matchup, no nothing. So I just think that I've been underwhelmed with Milton Williams and Christian Barmore in the middle. They need to be great. They're paid to be great. I don't know if they are. I don't know if good is simply good enough. I do like Harold Landry. Keon White, in my opinion, since Laramie Tunsil of the Commanders sort of put him in a body bag in the joint practice, he's been kind of invisible at practices. And Keon White is a guy like last year. You saw he was really good for a while. Then he disappeared. Then he was freelancing and so are we going to get any consistency there? Like I said, the linebackers I think are average. I like the cornerbacks. I like the cornerback depth. I think the linebackers are very average. I like Spillane, but he's just a good, solid player. Safety, I think they're average at safety. When you're out there, Jalen Hawkins, Craig Woodson playing a lot. I like Woodson. I like the future for him. But this year, how good is he going to be as a, 4th round rookie? I don't know. I like Peppers. I'm having a lot more questions about the defense, and especially, if the Patriots come out and Gonzalez is healthy and Davis is healthy and they're playing locked man on the top 2 guys of the other team, I will probably feel a lot better about what they're doing. I just haven't seen that yet. So that's a lingering doubt for me. And another thing similar to May, where I'm going to need to see it before I can really have a lot of enthusiasm that this team's going to be, a lot of they're being talked about they're definitely going to be a top 10 unit. I don't know. I mean, I think right as of right now, I think they're somewhere around league average to, maybe in the teens, but I'm not overly optimistic about that at this point.
They'll be a top 10 defense. Gonzalez will make a big difference. Barmore will be fine. Williams will be fine. I think they'll get more pass rush than they've gotten the last couple of years. I think they'll be okay. The Barmore thing is interesting, though, because I've seen a lot of people say Barmore's had a great camp. So kind of interesting that you differ from that and that you haven't necessarily loved what you've seen from Barmore. Because everything I've seen from your brethren is that he's been really good when he's been out there. So we'll see. And, of course, you got what happened last year and how he's managed and how that all kind of works out. All right, we're going to do rapid fire because we've gone long here. Just want to remind people, download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You mentioned that internally they love Drake Maye. You put a note in the email, Greg, that they feel pretty good about Will Campbell too, huh?
Yeah, they do. I was a little surprised about that, but I think a lot of it is context. I would say that universally, internally, when you talked about that second Vikings practice. And there's a lot of reporters called it, pretty much a disaster, and the sky was falling. Now, I said that I thought the offense won their matchup. There's a lot of context in terms of, Will Campbell. I mean, at the end of the day, you're talking about, like, between the two practices, they had a lot of reps. I mean, you're talking about, Will Campbell blocking Jonathan Grenard, like, on like 100 pass snaps over the course of like 2 days. That's like 3 games worth. And so what? He gave up some sacks. I mean, Grenard's good. There's a lot of scheme going on. Like, not the end of the world. I think he's been really good in the run game. He's shown well in the preseason games against backups, which, you expect. There's been some issues. Vrabel's even highlighted about, he gets beat inside. He's going to have to watch that. But I think they have a lot of confidence in terms of, his smart, his sort of toughness, his ability to get better. So they really like Will Campbell.
Well, that's great to hear. And hopefully they're right. And he ends up being just fine at left tackle. All right, let's run through some 53-man roster questions as we get ready for the third and final preseason game. Greg, you're still unsure about Polk and Bourne at wide receiver.
Yeah, I am. I think, and I'm sort of working my way through this, my next 53, which I think I'll publish sometime today. But, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know because of injuries. I mean, we haven't seen Polk and Bourne, a week or two. And how does that factor in? I would say Bourne has a better chance to stay on the roster than Polk does. I think that his time is coming to an end.
Yeah, the Polk thing is just, it's disappointing because I would have liked to see him at least get an opportunity and stay healthy to see if he could try to revitalize himself. But man, oh man, it's been a disaster. It's been an absolute disaster. The fifth interior offensive lineman, do they keep one?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've had Caden Wallace there. I feel good about, well, at least that they're NFL players, some sort of level of NFL players with Owenu, Bradbury, Wilson, and Ben Brown. Now you're talking, Wallace and Cole Strange. Does Wallace get a spot because, he's a somewhat recent high draft pick? Does he get another chance? I mean, it doesn't look like if Polk's going to be gone, it doesn't look like this new regime is very sentimental about what happened here before. I mean, I think really that spot, and maybe Wallace and or Strange make the 53 initially, but I think the Patriots, whether it's trade or waiver claim, and remember they're fourth. I think that goes through like week 3 of the season. So I think that guard center is one of those positions that they'll be active, like waiver claims, and like a guy, like if they find somebody that they like, that they think is better than Wallace and or Strange, is based on the film that they watch, then I think those guys are gone.
I don't want to go too overboard here, but the Wes Schweitzer thing kind of hurt, because when you look at this roster,
forgot about him.
They just don't. I mean, not going out and getting a veteran, experienced guard / center that, had that resume, right? Ben Brown wasn't seen as a guard until the last week or two. And everybody else that you had, it was like, okay, yeah, we saw a little bit of it from City So in 2023, but then last year was a completely lost season. And they were stuck with, we're going to move Caden Wallace now to left guard. And that experiment hasn't gone well enough because Ben Brown's leapfrogging him, even though he never played the position before. So not getting, I said this several weeks ago on the Everything Pats live stream that I do. The one regret, if you look back at how everything else unfolded, and of course, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
But the one regret is not trying to go harder after Joe Thuney.
I figured you were going to go there.
Yeah, or one of those guards. Because at the time, again, this is why I say hindsight's tough. at the time it was, well, you're not going to really pay Tooney what he wants because you want to put that money towards Ronnie Stanley and you paid Mike Owenu. But man, now you look at it, and if you were going into this season with, Campbell and you had Tooney as that solid rock in between Bradbury and the rookie left tackle, I think that would have made a significant difference for this offensive line and this offense overall. So if there's one regret, if there's one, maybe they should have done it, the Joe Tooney thing is going to stick with me this entire season.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I really like a lot of what they've done. A lot of what they did this offseason, and I, see reasons for doing certain things and not doing certain things. But, Joe Tooney, who was had for a 2026 fourth round pick, yeah, that's tough. I think, everybody knows how I feel about Joe Tooney, and like he's just his ability. I mean, he could play every position on the line. Like, he could play center. He could play tackle, which we saw last year, and like just to have that option and know that you can count on him, and like you're looking at a situation where it's Campbell, Tooney, it would free up Jared Wilson to compete more at center and possibly take that, so he'd be in between Joe Tooney and Mike Owenu, and then Morgan Moses at right tackle. Like, yeah, you'd feel a lot better, and definitely. Hindsight is 2020, but yeah, you're 100% right, Nick.
Yeah, I want to make sure we just, be real about it. In real time, I understood. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and kill him for it. It's just if you would want one back, I would have been part of that crew. I would have had egg on my face. If I would want one back, that would be it. Marte Mapu, you wrote a note that he's still showing up on special teams. You got Tavai, you've got Cam Riley. What comes out of that? I don't want to call it mess, but what comes out of that situation?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, Tavai hasn't been out there in weeks, and like I said, the linebacker group is so thin, especially after Spillane. Like, who's next up? Is it Monty Rice? Is it Jack Gibbons? Your next middle linebacker? If Spillane goes down, I don't know why Marte Mapu is still on special teams. I mean, I keep waiting for him to just be done. And of course, he's not on the field. He hasn't been on the field recently, which we know is, I think he's probably gone at the end of the day. I mean, I just couldn't believe at practice the other day. He was the number one personal punt protector. I was like, wait, what? But, who knows? But, Cam Riley is a guy who I thought, has shown well. I thought he played well in the preseason game, and he's also shown up on some special teams. Like, does he have a chance? It's an interesting group, and I don't know if any of them are great options.
Let's end it with this. How many corners do you think they take right now?
I mean, that's one position where I think they've gotten it right, but I have 6. Gonzalez, Davis, Jones, of course, Austin, maybe not Isaiah Bolden. So I had him on my last one. DJ James definitely makes the team. And I think it's between Battle, Polk, who has really come on, made a terrific play to chase down that kickoff return the other day. That'll open some eyes on the coaching staff. Kobe Minor, I don't think he's going to make it. Crossley, he's got a chance, but I think it's Bolden, Battle, and Polk, possibly Crossley for 1-2 spots. Do they keep an extra guy at cornerback because these guys are decent? All questions we need to be asking.
All right, that's Greg. We'll see what happens in the final preseason game against the Giants. Who knows who plays? We'll talk to you next time. We appreciate every single one of you. Bye-bye.